And just like this is another week. Welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir, CICC licensed immigration consultant. I love immigration and love what I do, mainly because it's so exciting, mainly because it can help so many of you out there. And of course, at the end of the day, it's also bread button and making some money over there in terms of offering the immigration services. But this episode is again the weekly roundup where we talk about whatever has happened within this last week in the Canadian immigration. And as I said, it's always exciting. Something or the other is always happening as far as this is concerned. The most recent update is with regards to the tariffs. I do not know if that is implemented or not. Haven't checked news this morning. It was pretty hectic trying to put together some things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So didn't really check. Why don't you let me know in comments, have the tariffs, the 25% tariffs that Donald Trump has said they're going to enforce upon Canada, has that been implemented or not? I mean, yes, announcement was there. I didn't really check if that has come into effect, come into force. Other than that, a couple of things happened as far as Canadian immigration is concerned. RCIP, FCIP, Rural Community Immigration Pilot, and Francophone Community Immigration Pilots were finally launched. We also found out that discreetly and sneakily, IRCC has announced the opening or reopening, or it has to be reopening date for the enhanced childcare program as well. Now, these 2 or 3 programs, as you might want to refer to, are very interesting for the reason because they have been in the pipeline for more than not more than a year, about a year. The regional pilots, the rural community pilots were announced last year somewhere in in March, and then it basically takes over the RNIP, Rural Northern Immigration Pilot Programs. It takes over those programs. Now, Mark Miller had come out and said that RNIP will become a permanent program. However, that's not how it is. So that RNIP, Rural Northern Immigration Pilot, has now become RCIP, Rural Community Immigration Pilot, and it is not a permanent program. It is still a pilot program, which basically means anything which has pilot in the name means it's an experimental program. It'll have a duration. It's not a permanent program. And then therefore, this duration for this program is 5 years, RCIP, and of course, FCIP, which is Francophone Community Immigration Pilot. Both the programs are pretty much the same. Of course, the fact is that the Francophones can also participate in the RCIP, but in order to participate in the FCIP, Francophone Community Immigration Pilot, you of course need to have language proficiency in French. The major stark difference between the two. Other than that, of course, the enhanced child caregiver program that is going to be launched or will start, or I don't know how you want to call that, but from 31st of March 2025, that has caused a bit of stir because lots and lots of people out there were hoping and expecting this program to be launched. I was a bit skeptical, considering that there are so many applications in the inventory and the quotas are limited. How are they going to manage all these applications and approve these applications, because they don't have enough spots? And if you don't have enough spots, you obviously can't do what is required, and that basically means the processing times will be seriously long. So yeah, those are the things. We'll talk about that. No, there was no express entry draw if somebody is interested, and of course there should be one around the corner. The talks are, or rather the speculation is extremely high that it might be a Francophone or a French category draw, which should be around the corner. I'm not sure if you guys noticed in the last draw that happened, express entry. Let me just pull it up for you, which is very, very strange because I do not know how and why that happened. It has never happened before. And what I'm referring to is, my internet seems to be not that fast today. Surprising. Okay, what I'm talking about the express entry draws. So the latest round that happened was on the 23rd of January. Of course, everybody knows that the score was 527, 4,000 invitations. We have all done the hippies and the hurrahs on this one. You know what was very surprising? Let's see click on the check previous rounds. And when I click on the check previous rounds, as you would notice, my internet seems to be slow. There was no PNP program draw. There was no PNP draw between these two draws. So technically, there has been only one PNP draw in the month of January. And now, since you're already in the month of February, that's pretty strange, isn't it? I mean, you would expect that if there is any other draw or not, that doesn't matter, but the PNP draws continue. They always happen. And I was quite surprised that there was no, there was only one PNP draw, which was, of course, preceding the CEC draw of the 8th of Jan. So 7th Jan, 8th Jan. But nothing here, absolutely nothing here. Very interesting. I'm not sure what is the logic behind this and why is it that IRCC chose not to conduct a PNP draw here. But yeah, let's see. So again, the expectations, anticipation for the coming week would be that you should see, I'm assuming that they would go back to conducting the PNP and then whatever draw that they wish to draw. I'm assuming and I'm expecting that there should be a PNP draw probably 4th of Febish. At least that's how they've been doing it, right? And then 5th or 6th of Feb, you can expect, in this time, in my opinion, it could possibly be a category draw. Francophone draws have always happened almost every month. So if I go back right until August, okay, there was a draw in August for French proficiency, then there was a draw in September for French proficiency, then there was a draw in October for French proficiency, and then there was, where is it? Yeah, of course, there was a draw in November for French proficiency. And of course, how could we miss? There was a draw in December for French language proficiency, but no draw in January, which again is pretty strange, right? So IRCC is a bit veering off certain precedented tasks. We're not sure exactly what's going on in the back room there, but yeah, so there was no French draw in January, which is quite strange because they moved away from at least once a month kind of a draw. Haven't seen that in a bit because you tend to recognize patterns, right, as they happen, and then based on those patterns, it's easy to speculate, it's easy to sort of predict, it's easy to expect and assume and hope and whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so because there was no draw in January, the expectation is extremely high that next week, technically, and based on all these things that you are seeing in front of you, that there should be a French category draw. Let's see how that one rolls, but definitely it's a draw week. So draw weeks are always exciting, and that's where we sort of drive a lot of our excitement from. But today's episode is going to concentrate more on these pathways that are going to be launched very soon. Actually, RCIP, FCIP technically has already been launched effective 31st, actually effective 30th January. But again, something is not going right with IRCC. Something is certainly not right there. What happened is with the RCIP, FCIP news, it was first released by Sudbury, and it was released by their commerce. It's not technically Chamber of Commerce, but the Community Economic Department, and they had the minister there, and they had the press release locally by Sudbury there, and that's how the news broke that these programs have finally been launched. And IRCC was quite late to announce or issue their publication or notice a day later, saying, yes, this program is now launched. Another issue there is that they are saying that it is going to be 18 communities that are included in this year's program. Earlier, it used to be 11 communities. They have added 7 more, which is very interesting. What is also interesting is Nova Scotia is included part of these communities. One of the communities in Nova Scotia, which is again also strange because the Atlantic provinces have their own program, which is Atlantic Immigration Program, and it's not even pilot; it's a permanent program. So Nova Scotia making an entry then was a bit strange, but again, okay, let's see. These are all considered to be rural pathways, rural communities. So we'll have to see how this one plays out. But what has happened is that they said there are going to be 18 communities, but from the list that I'm going to show you in a bit, is that there are only 14 communities. So 4 communities are still missing, or at least the names of 4 communities are missing. So interesting factors there. But you know what? Why don't I just show you instead of just talking about it, and we can then get cracking. Before we start, one small update, one small news on personal front. Instagram, we hit 100,000 followers. Yay! Exciting, right? YouTube, we are at 99,700. We are only 300 short. So wouldn't it be nice if all you beautiful, amazing folks out there are going to click on that subscribe button so that you get notification of all these wonderful videos as I release them. Of course, click on the bell icon and make sure that we get to our 100,000 silver button mark sooner than later, right? So you would agree, right, that we deserve to get to that milestone and get it out of the way sooner than later. And in order to celebrate our 100,000, so 100,000 on Instagram, 100,000 on YouTube, we are celebrating, of course. And to celebrate that, we are organizing an in-person seminar. Yay! This would be on the 23rd of February in Mississauga, in the Living Arts Center over there. More details for this will come out very shortly. I think by next week, we will publish the details. It's already, the place has been fixed. We have already made the payment for the seminar room. So the venue is fixed. Everything is fixed. The date is fixed. It will be between 2:30 and 6:30 p.m. So if you are in Toronto GTA area, and of course, if you want to sort of meet us, have more discussion, of course, this is a live seminar. So live Q&As are going to happen. So please do make sure you register on time, because as is the case with these things, there is always limited spots. So with limited spots, basically means we can only accept limited number of people in there. But yes, like, share, subscribe, hit on that like button, hit on the subscribe button, so we can get cracking with this one. Topics of discussion, PNP updates, of course, the other news, question and answers. So please hold your questions. I can see a lot of you are already posting your questions. So just hold on to those till we get to them, right? PNP draws, Manitoba. On 23rd of January, they held their expression of interest draw number 237, issued 128 letters of advice to apply. 609 was the low score under the PNP Strategic Recruitment Initiative. They've never been very clear about this Strategic Recruitment Initiative. Somehow they do hold it anyways. And of these total invitations, 22 candidates held a express entry profile, means once they get the approval, they will get your 600 points. Now, Prince Edward Island also conducted a draw on the 24th of January, issuing 22 invitations. Healthcare and healthcare professionals, again, making a comeback on this one. As you can imagine, more and more provinces are going to continue concentrating and prioritizing healthcare, construction, trade. You will see that trend throughout the year. PNP updates. All right. AAIP, Alberta Advantage Immigration Program, 2025 nomination allocation. So finally, their nomination allocations was announced. And the reason we have it separate for today for Alberta is because obviously we have spoken at length about the PNP quotas for each province. You already know they have been getting slashed by 50% overall, right? You know about that. The annual immigration target earlier was for 120,000 people for PNPs. For this year, it has been slashed by 50%, more than 50%. It has dropped down to 55,000 only. And therefore, individually for each province, the quotas were being cut. For Alberta, they had originally, in 2024, they had 9,942. This was slashed into half and it became 4,875, 2025's quota. The tricky bit, is what? That they already have, I think this is, let me get this. They already have 4,560 applications that are in the pipeline, which they have accepted and they are in process. So if their total quota is only 4,875, they have already in the pipeline 4,560 applications. What do you know? How many do you think they are going to be taking in this year, right? That's the interesting bit. Further, they have, as per their data released on their website, they have 44,610 candidates, eligible candidates, who have already created their expressions of interest on the expression of interest pool. So of course, if you head over to the Alberta website, you will see a lot of interesting data over there. But this tells you that all these provinces, not only Alberta, and the Alberta processing is so slow. They're still in so many streams. They're processing applications as of March. The ones which were submitted as of Feb, March, April of 2024. They're still processing those. Imagine how long it will take them to finish those. And then, this is PNP wise, it's pretty scary. But on the other note, so what was happening politically was that Mark Miller, the federal government, Mark Miller representing the federal government, had approached different provinces and asked them very nicely to please take some of the refugee claimants into their provinces. They said they will also federally fund them, but I do not know, there was some confusion there or whatever happened, because majority of the refugee claimants are currently in Quebec, in Ontario, and of course in British Columbia as well. But they wanted them to spread out across Canada, and therefore they asked all the different provinces that they should also take in some of these refugee claimants. Most of these provinces refused to do that, and they said, we have enough workers, we don't need any more temporary workers, etc., etc. And therefore, Mark Miller or the federal government has then slashed their quotas by half and said, well, if you do not need the people, you definitely don't need the PNP slots, to which most of the provincial governments have expressed anguish, anger, frustration, saying that they do need temporary foreign workers. It's just that they want to be able to choose the temporary foreign workers that they want for their province based on their labor market priorities. And then again, Mark Miller had come out and said that if you are still willing to take some of the refugee claimants, we will consider your nomination slots again. So it's basically blackmailing, if you want to call it, or it's like, I don't know, they're driving a hard bargain in terms of these negotiations. But at this point of time, the only province which has caved in is Newfoundland and Labrador. You see, their quotas were reduced to only 1,050 from 2,000 some number. So their numbers were reduced to only 1,050, and Newfoundland and Labrador were really in a bit of a pickle because they couldn't manage 2025 with only 1,000 quotas for PNPs, and therefore they accepted the federal government's bargain of taking in some of the refugee claimants so that they could get some additional slots, and they finally did manage. So they've got now 1,000 extra slots for their PNP quotas, and I'm assuming, looking at what happened with Newfoundland and Labrador, that certain other provinces might also agree to play the federal game at this point of time because they might really need these nomination quotas. But for the time being, Alberta's nomination quotas are still at 4,875. They already have 4,500 applications in process. So if you guys do manage to submit your application this year with Alberta, don't expect miracles in terms of, don't expect to get nominated anytime soon. Things are really moving slow in there. Other news. Okay. Let's talk about the RCIP, FCIP. Canada launches the Rural Immigration Pathway to Permanent Residence. It's when we say launch, it's basically reopened or relaunched because these programs existed in the sense of RNIP when they had 11 communities. Now, on the 30th of January, IRCC actually announced 18 communities. I have made that edit and put 14 communities because the names of the communities are only 14. So we do not know which are the other 4 missing communities. At least I haven't seen any information in there in order to be eligible under the RCIP, FCIP. Of course, these are the communities which are outside the Quebec area, right? Outside the Quebec, province of Quebec. And the idea is that the local smaller communities, once they have become eligible as per the criteria established by IRCC, they could have applied to be nominated and to be approved as a designated community. The communities that did toe the line and did get approved, they are the ones who are now being included, and the list is here. First one is Pictou County in Nova Scotia, which I said is a bit surprising. I mean, they have actually chosen Nova Scotia there. Yeah, interesting one. And then you have North Bay, then you have Sudbury, Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie, then you have Thunder Bay, you have Steinbach, you have Altona, Brandon, Moose Jaw, Clarsholm, West Kootenay, and then you have North Okanagan and Peace Lard. So these are the communities that have been included. Of course, what happens with this process is that, so these are the communities, and each community will have their own specific criteria. And from what I have checked until last night, the communities haven't opened their own websites or they haven't announced their own programs at this point of time. So that's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, IRCC is saying the program is now open, but communities have not opened because part of the process is for you to get a community endorsement. But let's talk more about that here. At the same point of time, Canada has also launched, this is a new program because there was no Francophone Community Immigration Program pilot before. So this is a new program. This is a pathway for French speakers to apply for permanent residence. The newcomers so basically they will be targeting individuals who want to come to Canada and with French language proficiency, and an offer of employment with priority occupations outside Quebec. And therefore, the whole process is exactly the same. The only difference is the language skills. The communities that are participating in the FCIP, again, as you see, New Brunswick, again, another Atlantic province making an appearance there. The Acadian Peninsula, Sudbury, of course, Timmins, Superior East region of Ontario, St. Pierre in Manitoba, and Kelowna in British Columbia. These are the 6 communities that have been designated for FCIP program. Of course, Sudbury and Timmins share it with the RCIP and FCIP as well. So those are the interesting bits over here. Now let's take a look at how do you apply for RCIP. Now, the thing is that IRCC has not yet announced the detailed criteria of applying for RCIP. So we have taken this information mainly from the RNIP because, in my opinion, it's going to be pretty much the same. I don't see any difference in the application at all because these changes or these announcements have already been announced in the Canadian Gazette, December the 14th. So I don't expect any bigger amendments from what we're going to be talking about. As is a norm, you definitely need 1 year of work experience. You definitely need a permanent full-time job offer from the employer in a designated community. You apply for endorsement, you're eligible, you get approval for the endorsement, and you apply for PR. This is pretty much how it works. But let's just very quickly read through what it is. So first thing that you need to do as far as if you wish to apply for RCIP or FCIP for that matter is that you must first obtain a permanent full-time job offer from an employer in one of the participating rural communities. The job offer should be for at least, it says 6 months. I don't think it can be for 6 months. It has to be for at least 12 months or a full-time permanent role. The 6 months may not work out. Again, we have to wait for the details from IRCC once they have published that information. But full-time permanent job offer, employers in these communities should be looking for workers to address specific skill shortages. So it's not like any job offer in all these communities will work. You might have to look at specific priorities, and those priorities will be addressed by the communities themselves. Now, in order to meet the basic eligibility requirement, you should have 1 year of full-time work experience within the past 3 years in a job that matches the skills. And the recent graduates from the local college in one of the participating communities may be exempt from the requirement for work experience. Okay. Again, these minor details, these criteria, the exact criteria and details will of course be published by RCC, and you will have that. But again, going as per the RNIP process, pretty much the same. If you have studied in a college, in one of the local colleges in these communities, then you may be exempted from the work experience requirement. The education, the minimum education is a high school diploma equivalent, Canadian high school diploma. That's what you need. So you'll need an ECA if you have completed education outside Canada. If you've completed education inside Canada, then of course it should be at least a high school diploma. The language proficiency, now this was very interesting. Now this varies from the type of occupation the job offer you have. But the lowest low is CLB level 4. But as your job offer knock code gets tier 2, tier 3, then you will need better language skills. But for tier 4, CLB 4 is the only requirement. Can you imagine how easy can they make it, right? Now, this is the biggest part, the community recommendation. You have to apply for a recommendation from the community where you have received the job offer. This step involves proving you are fit for the community's labor market and you intend to stay there for a long time. Now, each community has its own process for recommendations. So therefore, you should, if you're interested in this RCIP program, you should wait for these individual communities to reopen their programs, reopen their websites, announce the criteria. Now, what happens with these individual communities is that this is where it becomes a bit tricky, that because each one of them has a different criteria, means some of them follow the principle of point system, because there are so many applicants within their community and they want to be fair. So they will have a point system. Obviously, they'll pick the brightest and the best in terms of the points scored. And in some communities, you might have a requirement of certain occupations only. And only if those occupations are published or are identified as market priorities, would you then be eligible to apply for those. But again, keep your eyes out on the community pages itself. So once you do have the recommendation from the community, you will then be able to apply for permanent residence. Of course, please bear in mind the eligibility requirement remains the same, because these are issued by the federal government and only then further on taken on by the communities itself. Once you do get the community recommendation, of course, you will be submitting a PR application to IRCC through the federal portal for permanent residence. And in some cases, you might even need proof of funds, and the proof of funds will be required by those individuals who are currently not in Canada or who are not currently working in Canada. So those people will also need additional proof of funds. Of course, the proof of fund requirements is much lower than what you see for express entry, but you will require proof of funds in case you do not you're currently not working in Canada at that point of time. Processing and decision, well, RNIPs have seen 6 to 12 months processing time, and I'm assuming RCIP might also see a similar processing time, quite fast. The application moves quite fast, and during the processing application phase, you may also become eligible to apply for a temporary work permit so that you can start working while you're waiting for your permanent residence to be approved. And of course, once you get approved, the idea is that you do make that community your home. Please don't be that person who leaves the community immediately after getting a PR. You are not the person that they're looking for. You have a moral, ethical responsibility. Please maintain that. Participate within the communities for various settlement services. They will help you with your housing, employment, language, and training. And it does help. It helps you. And not only it helps you, but it also helps all the future candidates who will also follow you, probably applying for the same program. So please help them, by complying with the conditions and the requirements. Similarly, Canada also announced the launch date for the new permanent residence pathway for the home care worker. Now, I know this was really, people were anxiously waiting for this one. The problem with this program, the home care support workers or the child caregiver programs, is that it gets abused and misused a lot by a lot of people. You can already go on TikToks, you can already go on Instagrams and some videos as well, where people are promoting it as a program to bring your relatives, to bring your brother, sister, uncle, aunt, etc., 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 your friends, etc. Please do not abuse these programs. Now, I know my saying this is not going to make you change your mind if you've already done that, but don't do it is because, first of all, your application might also get refused if you're not complying with all the requirements, number one. Number two, it makes a big problem for future candidates, right, who are really genuine. And it also creates a problem for genuine employers who really need to recruit caregivers for their family. So, what can I say? I can only say, please don't do it, but I don't think most of you are going to listen if you already made up your mind. But again, one of the most abused programs as such. But hey, who am I to judge? We need to sort of just get on with the program and talk about what it can and cannot do. So this program will be launched on 31st of March 2025. It will replace the previous PR pathways for caregivers, which have already expired last year. The changes in the experience requirements as of the 16th of June will basically mean that earlier what used to happen is, once you submit your application, you would first get a work permit. That work permit was it was a semi-closed. So semi-closed means it was closed on the occupation. Means that work permit said that you could work for any employer, but you could only work in those occupations that have been listed. In this case, home support worker or home child caregiver programs. You could only be working in these two occupations depending on what your occupation was. And once you had completed a period of work experience, earlier it was 12 months, then it became 6 months, then you could go back and apply for your permanent residence. Only those people were eligible after they had completed their period of work experience. But what is going to happen now is that with this new launch of the program basically says you have to have work experience. So it says you need to have official language proficiency of only level 4, which I find really ridiculous and strange, is because you have to be communicating with your care patients, right? And if they're speaking English and you're speaking only CLB4, how are you communicating with them? But again, IRCC seems to think differently. They think that you might not need to communicate. At least that's what I'm thinking. But anyways, the requirement official language ability equivalent is CLB4 on the CLB scale. and they have to hold a high school diploma. That's the minimum education requirement. They should have a recent and relevant work experience. So if you're applying for a child caregiver, you should have recent and relevant work experience for child caregiving. And if you're applying for the home support worker, then you should have relevant and recent work experience in home support care. And you should receive an offer of full-time employment for a home care job. So people are asking, if I get a job in a daycare, will it be eligible? Well, it will not be eligible because they've specified then you should receive an offer of full-time employment for a home care job. So it has to be a private family. At least that's what we know as of right now. Now, before I go on to give you more details on this one, please note that the details have not been published. Criteria have not been published. More requirements on this program have not been published. All these videos that you are seeing on YouTube, on TikTok, they're all baloney for the reason because how do they know? The details have not been published, and obviously people are then only assuming, or I'm going to tell you some requirements that will apply here as well, but those assumptions are made only on the basis of the past program. However, the past program required you to first be working in Canada and then you would apply for your PR. In this case, the minute your PR is approved, if you're inside Canada, you are a permanent resident. And if your PR is approved, if you're outside Canada, you arrive in Canada and you're a permanent resident. So there is no condition or requirement anymore to come to Canada and first work in Canada and then apply. So this was the biggest change, means you could get PR on arrival if you're coming from outside Canada once you're approved in this program. However, in my opinion, this program's processing time is going to be really, really long because there are just too many applications in the inventory at this point of time for the caregivers. So we're going to wait and see as to how that goes. But okay, so let's talk about what is required by the officer. At least if you are eligible, if you wish to participate in this program, what is required? Some of the skills and experiences that the officer will be looking for or may look for is first aid, CPR, administering medication. Now, these are very important if you're going to be doing home support worker, and people who have been doing those programs called PSWs, personal support worker, etc., they already would be aware of this. Now, when it comes to caregiving for seniors or people with some disabilities, then these become even more important. Then cooking and housekeeping. Now, your job is not that of a cook or of a housekeeper. However, these are the skills which might be required in some points of time in order to take care of those patients. So cooking and housekeeping, though these are not the primary skills. Please do not confuse this with primary skills. Managing children. Of course, if you have the experience of managing children, childcare, daycare in a kindergarten, then those would be the relevant skills that people, IRCC may be looking for. Ability to move individuals safely means you physically are in a position to help with the child, with the caregiving of the individual. Bathing children, elderly or disabled people. Driving, in some cases you might also need to be driving. You will be required to drive to take the person who you're taking care of to the hospitals for the doctor's appointment, etc. To conduct routine health checks. Feed a child, an elderly or a disabled person. Now, of course, this is not a comprehensive list, but this is how it rolls. Now, I will talk to you about something which is very, it's become a contentious issue. It's become really a subject where people are debating. The question was, can I claim work experience if I am taking care of my own children? Interesting, isn't it? So, does this work experience have to be in a professional setting, or does the fact that I have one child, two children, three children of my own, and I have been taking care of my own children, I have brought them up, and now I would like to, apply for this child care program because I have the experience of taking care of my own children. There is the ruling, I think it's in federal court, I don't remember the case law, that the court did accept that if you have taken care of your own children, then that should count for experience of having managed children. So I know a lot of people out there were like aghast as to how can you expect this? How can you accept this? This was going to be blatant misuse and abuse of the program. Well, I agree. But the fact is, if IRCC is looking for experience in taking care of children, then why wouldn't or why shouldn't the experience of taking care of your own children be considered as valid experience? Now, the difference is when you take care of your own children, you're not getting paid, so it's not considered as work, right? So that's the only difference. But when you're taking care of children in a professional setting, like a child care, daycare, kindergarten, then it can be considered as work, because you are getting paid, you're being remunerated for it, right? So that is the basic difference in these two factors. But can taking care of your own children be considered, in my opinion? And also the fact that IRCC has in the past accepted that, and there's a federal court ruling as well. I think I forget the case law, but yes, that is also accepted as experience. I know a lot of you are going to get like, how can that happen? But yeah, apparently it does happen. Now, what is a valid job offer in this setting of child caregiver program or home support caregiver program? Though again, these details have not been published. That's a disclaimer. These details have been taken from the previous program, so that people who are preparing for this PR pathway can prepare for this application in advance, because when this program will open on the 31st of March, and if it is going to be first come first basis, it's going to get closed like this. I mean, we are already getting so many clients in our office who have been registering with us, and we are like beginning to think how much of these applications can we take on. I mean, we can only take on for as many number of people that we have in the office as in who can handle the applications, right? It's already getting a bit tough there. But the point is that on that day, when the time comes for submission, if you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't prepared everything in advance, if you have not done your homework, if you have not prepared everything the way it is required, you might not be able to submit the applications on time. Because in the past, we have noticed this program used to always open on the 1st of January, and it like this, it was closed, right? Within a matter of minutes, less than an hour, all the spots that were opened were all gone very, very quickly. So if you are one of those individuals who is looking to apply for this program, the reason why we are telling you all this information is so that you can prepare in advance, you can have all this information in advance, and you're ready to apply when it happens. And obviously, the only place to get this information and data is from the past programs, similar programs. No, what would an IRCC officer be looking for as far as the genuine, or rather, what is the valid offer is concerned? The first of all, it has to be genuine, right? And genuine basically means that the employer actually needs a caregiver. The requirement of caregiving should be real. So how is that established? So for example, I'm an employer and I say I want a child caregiver, but I don't have any young children. So where is this need for a child caregiving? So whoever is the employer will also have to establish that they have either a young child in their homes for which the child caregiving is required, or that they have an elderly or a disability, or a person who has a disability, or a person who needs support and care. That person is in their household, and that probably would be requiring a doctor's note or a doctor's certificate or a doctor's document as well to establish their condition, which requires a third-party care. Financial capability, right? Now, this is another good one, because a lot of people think everybody is eligible. So if I have young children, I'm eligible to give you a job offer. That's not how it works, right? At the end of the day, this is still going to be employment opportunity. Now, when it's an employment opportunity, means I should be able to pay wages, and the wages should be at the prevailing rate. So you can check the job bank, you can check what are the prevailing wages for that NOC code, and you would be able to establish. So therefore, if I am going to be hiring a child caregiver, then based on my family size and my household income, I should have enough income to be able to take care of my own living expenses of my family and be able to pay the prevailing wages for that occupation to the person who I'm going to be hiring for 30 hours per week. So this is something again to be noted. You will have to be able to provide documentations from the employer, which includes their income documents, including tax returns, etc. So please bear that in mind as well. Further, the salary has to be at the prevailing wages, of course. Form completion. So again, this is as per the previous program. The form number that is required to be completed by the employer is form number 5983. This is an employment form, employment job offer. You can take a look at it, download the form, keep it ready, talk to the employer, see if they will be willing to complete it. It has to be a full-time employment, otherwise it will not be valid. Again, All these conditions and criteria as per the old program. I'm sure IRCC will issue the new criteria for the program soon, but this will give you a bit of a head start to start preparing things. Employer's location should be outside of the province of Quebec, and they cannot be a diplomatic entity. So these are the main requirements for this program. Now, big question, can I receive a job offer from my relatives in Canada? And this is where the abuse starts, but that's a very relevant question. So for example, I have a young child who's 4 years old in my house, my child. And can I sponsor or can I hire my sister who has either a work experience of working in a daycare, childcare, kindergarten, or has her own 3 children who are now young adults? And can I hire her to come to Canada on this program to offer caregiving services for my child? Technically, it's possible. Technically, the answer is yes. Technically, IRCC does not restrict, or there is no restriction that your relative cannot be your employee for this particular role. However, the job offer has to be legitimate. However, you as an employer should financially be capable of being able to pay those salaries. And of course, you have to be able to show the legitimacy of the offer, etc., etc. And yes, this has to be established. But can this be done? So many people are raising their eyebrows. Well, yes, it can be done. And can you use a person who has experience of their own managing their own children? Then yes, you can. Technically, it's all legit. It's all fine. Just don't know how to avoid the abuse there. That's all. Okay. This was another news which came out, though I didn't see too much of sense in it. It said Canada loosens the health insurance requirement for super visa applications. And in this case, so basically the requirement is still the same. You do need health insurance for your parents in order to apply for their super visa if you're a permanent resident or a citizen. But now they would also accept health insurance policies from companies, foreign companies who are outside Canada, as long as these companies outside Canada have an office in Canada and they are able to provide insurance compensations in Canada. So they would then be eligible. The list of these agencies is available on the OSFI website, Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. I didn't find much information on there, to be very honest. So at this point of time, I'm a bit circumvent. But there was another change that was introduced, and that was that every time your parent comes to Canada on a super visa, the officer at the port of entry can demand the insurance for their period of stay in Canada. So if your parent is coming to Canada and expecting to stay in Canada for 3 years, because on a super visa you can stay up to 5 years at a stretch, then they should have that period of insurance. That's the requirement. Right, what else have I got? I think that's pretty much it. Yes, that's all that I have for you for this presentation. Connect with us on social media platforms all over the place. We are there on Instagram. Hey, 100,000 on Instagram. Facebook, hundreds and thousands on the Facebook in our community. YouTube, shortly, very soon going to be 100,000. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And of course, we are there on Twitter as well. And do come for a chat there whenever you're there. Let's get on with the questions. I can see plenty of those coming through. Now, I have exactly 30, no, not 30, yeah, about 32, 34 minutes. I'm going to rush through this very, very quickly. Please bear with me. There are lots and lots of questions. Pranesh says, what do you think about upfront medical for PR? Well, there is no requirement for an upfront medical. If you are a person who's in Canada making an application from inside Canada and you have completed your medicals in the past within the last 5 years, whether you're applying for PR or temporary residence, you can use the same medicals. If you're outside Canada, then please wait for IRCC to ask you for medicals and only then complete the medicals. That would be better for you because the medicals can be linked to your application easily without you having to do upfront medicals. 505, any chance? Well, again, for all the questions that I will see with about the chances, I'm going to skip those questions, obviously, because I don't know the chances. I don't know the chances for the knock code. I don't know the chances for the occupation. I don't know the chances for the draws when they will happen. I don't know the chances for score. However, if you look at the past trends that have been happening within the draws, that would give you an idea that at least 500 plus scores should be pretty positive. And the fact that IRCC has started conducting the bigger or other reasonable size draws of 4,000 each, therefore there is a reasonable hope and expectation that 500s at some point of time this year should get cleared out. Just don't know when that might happen. However, the only thing that I continue to have a bit of concern about, and I guess that concern will remain valid until the LMI points have been removed from express entry, which we are all expecting somewhere in spring. The problem is spring in Canada is pretty long, unlike lots of other countries that you might, expect. Let me just open this for you guys. Right, so let's make this bigger. This is the latest express entry pool, right? If you see the score, 601 to 1200 is obviously PNPs, and those will get cleared out in the next draw. But 501 to 600 is 24,000. Now, obviously, there's 24,000. 4,000 got cleared off when the last draw happened in express entry. So it was at 20,000 as of the last draw. The problem here is, at some point of time, there will be a category draw. And I'm assuming that there'll be a category draw next week. And that's the assumption. Of course, they have to happen somewhere, right? They have to be fitted in somewhere. Now, can IRC conduct PNP, CEC category draw? Absolutely possible. Can IRCC conduct only a PNP draw and no other draw? Unfortunately, that's also possible. And can IRCC conduct only PNP and only a category draw and no CEC draw? Also a possibility. Now, if any of that has to happen, where a CEC draw is not conducted for that given segment of bi-weekly space, then this pool tends to grow very quickly. We have seen almost between, on an average, 175 to 250 people getting added every single day. That's the range we have seen over the last 6-8 months with scores of 500 plus. Now, if that happens, then this pool gets inflated very quickly with the range of 501 to 600. And therefore, that pool getting thinned out at a time when probably when they will remove the LMIA points, that would be very interesting. In my opinion, I expect the pool to get thinned out by about 30 to 35%, not more. People are expecting 50, 80, 100%. That is not going to happen. I do not know why people feel like that. But I am assuming between 30 to 35%, the pool might get thinned out with people having lost their points for job offers. Now, mind you, job offers are not only with people with LMIAs, they can also be for people who have closed work permits. They're on an intra-company transfer, or they're on any other closed work permit for which they're getting job offer points. So those guys are also badly affected with this policy, unfortunately, for no fault of their own. But let's see how spring brings out. When the spring comes out and then these points are actually removed, the 50 points or the 200 points, then we will see the real impact of the draws that happen after that, and how quickly this 500 plus gets cleared out. I'm hoping, I would stay very positive for all 500s, especially after the spring, once the points have been taken away, especially after that. Until that time, a lot depends on how consistently IRCC will conduct the draws, how frequently that happens, and what are the draw sizes. That is what will determine what the scores are going to be and how quickly the scores are coming down. Giant, sorry, there's no question there. Oh yeah, here it is. I work full-time in Canada under a tier 2 job and accepted a full-time remote tier 1 job with an Indian employer. Will I get CRS points for both my Canadian and foreign experience? Yay! You've been watching too many YouTube videos. You've been watching too many of those, what do you call, TikTok and whatever, where they are saying, oh, you know what? You can get work experience at the same time in Canada and at the same time foreign work experience. And you thought, you know what? Let me take advantage of this and get very lucky. Well, I know what's going on the social media as far as work experience and the double dipping is concerned. The thing is, think about it. If IRCC would allow you to claim points at the same time for Canadian work experience and at the same time for foreign work experience. So basically, in a span of 1 year, you are saying you claim points for 2 years, 1 year in Canada, 1 year foreign work experience. At least that's what you're trying to ask me. Then why wouldn't they allow people who are already in Canada, who are working 60 hours a week, why shouldn't they give them 2 years of work experience, right? Why not? Why is there a restriction that only 30 hours per week is the maximum amount of work experience? Why is there a restriction that the 30 hours per week and 60 hours for 1 year and over 12 months? And I know where this has originated. This has originated from a tweet from Stephen Murrins, where he has posted a screenshot of one of the IRCC officers talking about this, that yes, you can do it. But I do not know who the IRCC officer is, and I question the response because I don't agree with that response. And who am I to not agree with the response? Well, I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant, and the reason why I don't agree with the response is because of this particular document. What on my screen is right now, these are the ministerial instructions that govern, that respect the express entry. Means the express entry system is managed based on certain regulations. They are managed based on certain factors, right? And that is how IRCC officer can have a standard response to all the processing. Now, if I just scroll very quickly down, because I don't want to go through this, it's a very long list, but I'm going to come down to section 25. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. No, it's still not here. Give me a moment. 21. So this is skills transferability point, combination of foreign work experience and official language. And then this is the one we are looking for. Combination of Canadian work experience and foreign experience. Now, this is where everything is defined. So these are the points that have been defined. And then there is the elaboration. So what is foreign work experience? We already know what is Canadian work experience. Canadian experience is gained in Canada for a Canadian employer paid in Canada as an employee. For the purposes of section 23 and 24, which is here, right, where they're talking about how you get points for your skills transferability, it says the foreign work experience is work experience that is acquired by a foreign national outside Canada. That is the first thing, that your work experience has to be outside Canada. It is usually understood outside Canada doesn't only mean employer being outside Canada, it is also you physically being outside Canada. Now, this is open for debate, and some IRCC officers may accept that as long as the work location is outside Canada, means you're working remotely, then this is acceptable. I agree with that. The problem is when express entry was designed, when these instructions were written, remote work experience did not exist as such in principle. Remote work experience became mainstream during COVID, right? And that's when it started happening. But IRCC has not amended these changes at this point of time. So acquired by a foreign national outside Canada is still a debatable subject. But let's go with the fact that even if your work is outside Canada, means you're working for an employer who's outside Canada, it should be accepted. I agree with that one. We can debate and agree on that one. However, as I scroll down, and then it says work in excess. What it says is that for the purpose of section 23 and 24, a period of work experience that exceeds full-time work in one occupation or simultaneous periods of work experience. This should give you the answer. Simultaneous periods of work experience in more than one full-time occupation are to be evaluated as a single period of full-time work experience in a single occupation. This defines that you can't double dip. You can't say, I'm working in Canada, I want 1 year of Canadian work experience. I'm also working for a foreign company outside, so I should also get 1 year of foreign work experience. You can't have it both ways. And this, my friend, is the section of ministerial instructions which governs this express entry and its implementation and its application. This is where it says. So I have seen that screenshot from Stephen Murrins where he's posted, and I know it has created a lot of confusion. I know it has created a big anxiousness and excitement that we can now claim 2 points. A lot of people are creating fake work experiences while creating work experience from outside Canada. They're running fake payrolls there as well. But this is the section of the law which is very, very clear. So I'm not sure the the logic from where the officer who gave that answer on that screenshot, where it came from. But again, there is always a disclaimer there. There is always a line there which says, individual applications will be assessed by individual officers, and that is how it will be interpreted, right? My opinion, legalis, if you want to talk about, and how the law governs these aspects in front of you, you can always go and please check ministerial instructions, section 24 and 25. It will tell you work in excess does not allow full-time work in Canada and full-time work outside Canada at the same point of time to be combined to give you work experience for Canadian work experience and foreign work experience. No. And I am not saying it because I have an opinion. I'm saying it because that's where it says so, that work in excess cannot be claimed. You can only claim for one occupation for maximum of full-time work experience with that occupation. Simultaneous work experience are not acceptable unless I'm reading it wrong. I hope that clarifies for you and for so many of you out there who have been having this question. I completed 3-year full-time CA internship in India while pursuing a degree. Can this count as foreign work experience for CEC Express Entry? Yes, the answer is yes. CA internship counts. There's no problem with that. If you see the NOC code for auditors, it will say internships count in that as well. So that's not a problem. Me and my wife living with my aunt, and they have 2 kids. Can she sponsor my wife for childcare program? Best province to get PR in 6 months. I answered that question in detail. Please take a look at that. There is no best province to get PR in 6 months. As of right now, no province is giving you PR in 6 months. I have changed my NOC code after 6 months for OINP international student profile recently. Will it result in PFL in future after invitation? Well, as long as you have a good explanation for the reason to change your NOC code, you shouldn't be worried about it. How to explain my legal status to Ontario? I'm on implied status for fake extension while my OINP application is in progress. Well, tell them you're an implied status. Show them the application confirmation that you have submitted an application. Provide them with a copy of that. Provide them with the copy of your previously valid work permit. If you made the new application before that work permit expired, you will be on implied status, and that's how you would explain it to them. Wife outside Canada, PGWP approved. She don't have plans to move. Will 3-year period start from the day she activates her work permit at the border? No, the 3 years work period, the 3 years work permit will activate. No, sorry, the 3 years work period is already established. She has 3 years from the date they approved. So no matter when she comes, she will get 3 years from the date it was approved. I'm working as software developer, co-op, paid at CIBC. I'm on postgraduate work permit currently. Does this experience count towards any period of co-op while you are in study period? Does not count. Study permit does not count. After you've applied for postgraduate work permit, any period of work after that, if you are paid for it, that counts. Canadian Masters, do I still need to do ECA for my bachelor's degree, which I got from my home country degree for EE profile? No, not really. If you already have a Canadian Masters and you obviously get more points for a master's degree, then you don't need a ECA for your bachelor's degree at all. I'm on postgraduate work permit, non-accompanying spouse, got P2. If I had to apply for bridge open work permit, options for my wife, open work permit, prepared file for sponsorship. Very unlikely that your wife will get an open work permit on the basis of your bridge open work permit, because if you're already on P2, then your even bridge open work permit is not going to be approved. Because they will simply cancel it since you already become a PR, because the processing time for bridge open work permit is about 3 to 5 months. And because there will be no bridge open work permit, your wife does not have any basis to apply for an open work permit. Instead, once you become PR, you apply for spousal sponsorship. And on the basis of your AOR, which you will get for your spousal sponsorship, then you can apply for your spouse's open work permit if your spouse is inside Canada. Can I count my vacations, personal days, sick as experience? My company offers almost 6 weeks for these days every year. Well, unfortunately, no. A maximum of 2 weeks is allowed. Anything more than that is as per the discretion of IRCC. But unfortunately, if you're not working, that doesn't count as work experience. 700 hours of work experience in US on postgraduate work permit, eligible under CEC. Can I work in home country for current employer in Canada to complete 1 year? You have to understand, it's not only hours. So it has to be 1,560 hours over a period of 12 months. So if that 700 hours was calculated on the basis that you worked for more than 30 hours per week, then the hours excess of 30 hours per week will not be counted. So you need to recalculate your work experience. But yes, 1 year, 12 months is what you're looking. 52 weeks is what you're looking for. 52 weeks, 1,560 hours. That's what you're looking for. P1 wrong last entry date required to notify left as in citizen. My God. Okay, last entry date, don't worry too much about it. It's not going to make any difference. It's very normal for IRCC to make a mistake on the last date of entry on your COPR. It's not going to make any difference on your PR. It's not going to make any difference to your citizenship application. So don't worry about it. But if you are worried about it, by all means, raise a web form, let them know. But as I said, it has zero impact on any other process for you. Got ITA 530 CEC with LMIA, non-accompanying inland spouse. Should I accompany my spouse? Well, of course, you can accompany your spouse. I mean, your spouse can accompany you if your new score after adding your spouse, or after your spouse becoming if your spouse is accompanying, your new score stays over the drawn score, which was 527, then absolutely no problem. As far as taking a chance is concerned, again, it all depends, right? By adding your spouse as accompanying, what is your new score? If it is drastically low, then the decision is entirely up to you whether you want to take a chance or not. But adding the spouse on an existing ITA, provided your new score remains over the drawn score, then you're fine. Otherwise, it's a chance, and that decision you have to take. I'm a casual early childhood educator working for 2 different organizations, but I have almost like full-time hours. How is the number of hours calculated for CEC? I do not know how to answer that question as to how the number of hours is calculated. Well, they will calculate for each job what is the specific hours you were completing. So for example, if in one job you were working, let's say 10 hours per week, and in the other job you were working 25 hours per week, then both are combined and together you will get credit for 30 hours per week. So for CEC, you can add different occupations, different jobs, different roles, different employers, different periods of work at the same point of time. However, the maximum you will get credit for would be 30 hours per week. So if you have 2 part-time jobs, in one you are working 14 hours, in another you're working 22 hours, then you can combine the 2 and you will still get credit for 1 year of work. You'll get credit for 30 hours full-time work experience. I've been with the same company for 2 years, but it was acquired and renamed. I keep same knock. How should I reflect this transition in my work experience? Well, either you can split your work experience into two employment periods, or you can show the one name, but in the brackets put the old name as well, and then add a letter of explanation. That is how you can go with that. You can also add documents to show that the company has been acquired, renamed, etc. You might have some public available documents, or your company might have sent you. You can add those, but it's not a problem at all. So you can have split into 2 different work experience, or you can have one experience, and in the brackets you can add the old name and then add a letter of explanation. I created PR portal but haven't received P1. Will that be an issue? No, it is not an issue. Spouse open work permit is valid until December. My spouse will finish MBA, apply for postgraduate work permit. Can I continue working during August to December? Absolutely. You have a spouse open work permit. You are not restricted by any periods of not working by your spouse, principal applicant, any kind of restrictions on them. After they have completed their studies, they can't work until they apply for postgraduate work permit. That doesn't apply to you. You have a valid work permit. You can continue working. Worked for same employer for 3 years. Employer helped apply C20, just approved. Can I claim 50 points after approval? Absolutely, you can claim 50 points after approval if you already have been working for the same employer, provided you have a approved closed work permit. If you have that, you can claim those 50 points immediately, no problem. Applied LMIA work permit in process. IRCC says I can work same conditions until next 6 months as per my postgraduate work permit. Can I do gig jobs or part-time jobs or stick to current employer? Applied LMIA. Also, you applied for closed. Yeah, I mean, so whenever you apply for a new work permit, the conditions of your earlier work permit or your status remains valid until your new work permit has been issued. So yes, you can do whatever you wish to in terms of other jobs or continue to work for different employers, no problem. To submit 5669 form, should each dependent sign their own? Should extra info sheets be attached at the end of each individual's form? Do these sheets also need signature? So the only time you will add additional sheets is if there is additional information to be added. So for example, the personal history has only some 5 or 6 sections or fields. So if you need to add more, you can take a piece of extra sheet and add that information in the same format. Same thing with address history, same thing with education, same thing with work experience, etc. So yes, all those can be added. On those extra sheets, please mention the person's name, UCI number, and the form number you're trying to complete. And the form has to be signed, wet signatures with hand signatures, by each person who is completing that form. So if there are 2 people, 2 dependents, or 2 individuals completing the form, you have to create separate forms for both of them, and both of them have to sign hand signatures. Employer gave me a letter to support my PR application. It's work or not? My employer gave me a letter to support my PR application. It's work or not? I'm working as an office admin. Yeah, absolutely. If your employer is giving you a letter to support your application, it works. Yes. I mean, I'm not sure what exactly is the question otherwise. PGWP is still pending, due Feb 9. What can? I don't understand your question other than this, but yes, if your employer is giving you a letter for your reference letter for your employment, that works for sure. But if you're asking that, does your employer gives you a letter for a work permit, will that support or not? No, you need an LMIA to apply for a work permit. But if it is just to support the fact that you have been working for that employer, that certainly works, no problem. Guys, please do not do any more super chats. We will not be able to complete, and hence I would have to leave it high in between. So please don't do any more super chats. Thank you. I created my profile with BA experience, which I worked for 6 months. Same time frame, I was also working in store as a store supervisor, which I didn't mention. What should I do now? Once you get your ITA, please make sure you mention any other period of work in your personal history. That way you are keeping it clean, clear, honest, straightforward, and truthful. I applied for bridge open work permit instead of closed work permit while waiting for ECOPR. What if work permit get rejected before ECOPR? It all depends. In most cases, it shouldn't get, applying for a bridge open work permit will not automatically refuse or result in your application being refused. There are only certain conditions under which, if you do not have a valid closed work permit at the time the application is being approved, then your application gets refused. But those conditions are very specific to arranged employment points under the federal skilled worker. They don't apply to the CEC, and I'm hoping you are CEC. Per IRCC, amendment is only applicable if error is made by IRCC. So if no amendment, then what's the risk of applying for citizenship after 5 years from last entry date? No, there is no risk. So please don't worry about it. When you apply for citizenship, they check the day you became a PR. Your previous date of entry does not really matter. What is mentioned on your COPR doesn't matter. So please don't stress too much about it. Nothing here. Can I be eligible for caregiver program with a job offer only without any previous work experience? I'm on PGWP, which expires in July 2025. Well, actually, no, you will not be eligible. The requirement is that you should have recent and relevant work experience in order to be eligible for a caregiver program. Can my PR file be rejected because I applied bridge open work permit instead of close? I just applied. I just responded to that. Okay, nothing here. My CRS is 465. Should I reduce it as per the last year draws? Well, if OINP conducts a skilled trade draw at this point of time, before IRCC conducts its skilled trade draw, then there is a possibility. Again, obviously, Ontario knows best, but there is a possibility that Ontario will put the upper range of their draw at 460, at 436, I think, because the last trade draw was at 437, if I am not wrong. I don't remember exactly what was the last trade draw, but yeah, 1 point less is where Ontario will go with, unless IRCC conducts a new draw. I have 2 years in work experience in retail. Now I got an LMIA and job in pharmacy. So if I create Express Entry profile and add LMIA, will I be considered in a healthcare job? No, of course not. Your healthcare in order to be eligible under a healthcare category, you need to have 6 months of experience. Having an LMIA doesn't make you qualified for a healthcare category. You having work experience of at least 6 months in the last 3 years is what makes you eligible for the healthcare category. Move to Canada on an LMIA exempt closed work permit via an intra-company transfer. I am eligible for a promotion to senior manager. Could it affect my work permit status? Yes, your employer should apply. I mean, if there is a change in your NOC code, specifically NOC code, then your employer must apply for amendment or apply for a new work permit. But if the NOC code remains the same, then there is no change at all. But if there is a change in the NOC code, then you must apply for a new work permit or an amendment to the previous one. I'm an HR and in FCIP, even if my NOC code is not in much demand, but if my employer likes my profile, would want to hire me, do I have a good chance? Well, you're answering your own question. If it is not in demand, then FCIP will not be picking you up, right? Or rather, the community will not be giving you the endorsement. So always please check the community, check what their conditions and requirement are, and only apply as per that. And only then you will have a chance, basically. Do you have any idea when will OINP start to conduct draws? Well, OINP still has not published its nomination quota for 2025. We don't know what it is. And I think at the back end, they're still trying to figure out what and how much they should allocate to each different stream. Once they've done that, they will then come out with the numbers. Also, please bear in mind that Ontario already has lots of applications which are already in process and in pipeline. So they will really have to figure out what they're going to do with their nominations for this year. You'll have to wait and see. Foreign worker stream, unfortunately, has never been a priority for Ontario. Even earlier, they used to issue only one draw, conduct only one draw in a whole year. Last year also, I think there was only one or maybe two. Only one was a general draw by Ontario. Previously, 1.5 years, there was no draw at all. So always have alternative options in such scenario where you're just depending on one stream, which also they have not been very regular with. Should I add non-points claimable work experience in Express Entry? You can hold it back. You can show it in the personal history after you get your ITA. Guys, please don't do super chats. I will not be able to complete your questions, and I would not want you to feel all high and dry on that. I submitted my spouse open work permit on January 20th at 10 p.m., but the confirmation received email shows January 21. Will this affect my application? Yes, it will. No, actually, it will not because the new rule came into effect from 21st of January 0500 UTC. Means you had time until 20th of January midnight. So don't worry about it. As long as you submitted before midnight, 20th of January, you are fine with that. Postgraduate work permit expired in August, applied for fake extension, have not received refusal. Can I work until I get refused? Absolutely. As long as the decision is being made, you can absolutely continue working. You are still on implied status. I have postgraduate work permit till November 25, and I have LMIA, which will expire in May. Can I apply closed work permit in May? Until what time I will still work on open work permit? If your LMIA is expiring in May, as long as you apply for your closed work permit before the expiry of your LMIA, you are absolutely fine. You will be on an implied status. The conditions of your previous work permit will continue to apply until the decision is made on your closed work permit application. So once it is approved, then the closed work permit conditions apply. What are your thoughts on BC saying having only 8,000 PNP locations? Last year, it was mentioned that they had 15,000 last year, as per a post on Instagram. Are we missing anything here? I'm not sure what your questions are and what thoughts do you want from me. BC hasn't yet announced what their quotas are for this year. It is assumed that even with other provinces being cut by 50%, they might also get a slash of 50%. So I'm not sure what your question here is. As far as my thoughts are concerned, I mean, how does it matter what my thoughts are? What will matter is what does BC PNP choose to do with the nomination allocations that it gets, whether it's 8,000 or low or more. It will all depend on what the final allocation is and when they choose to publish. BC PNP is still due to announce its international postgraduate stream and the details of it. A lot of people are waiting for that. But yes, their final allocations will determine how they prioritize different streams. Plus, what also matters is how many applications they already have in process at this point of time. That will also determine how many draws they will continue with and how many invitations they issue. Last entry date was provided by me as a copy paste error only for my wife. ECOPR gets last entry date from portal 1, right? No risk. There is no risk. And you're asking me for the third time, and I'm still telling you the last date of entry on your COPR will have no impact on your future citizenship application. The day you become a PR, from that date, everything starts counting. Okay. Previous dates are only important for your calculation of credit while you are in Canada as a temporary resident. So your date of last entry will not make any difference. So please don't worry. Is 437 enough for healthcare? I don't know. Please take a look at the past trends. The last draw was at 463 for healthcare. 437, take a guess. Amritpal, nothing here. Applied under CEC with LMIA points, but employer sold business now, but working at same place. What we can do now? Well, as long as you have an LMIA, you can claim points for it, as long as that LMIA is valid and that employer or the new employer has not cancelled any of the LMIAs, then you're good to go. But you will still need a job offer. So now the new employer should give you the job offer. If it's the old job offer, then and that employer no longer exists, then that might not be valid. So get a new job offer, please. Am I allowed to be promoted as I enter Canada as an individual contributor? If promoted, can I extend my work permit from 5 to 7 years? Am I allowed to be promoted? Well, yes, of course, you're allowed to be promoted. And as I enter Canada as individual contributor, I have no idea what we are talking about here. Individual contributor, if promoted, can I extend? I'm not sure what you mean by individual contributor. I'm sorry, but that information doesn't really help me. But yes, of course, you can be promoted. And when you get promoted, your employer should apply for a new work permit, if that's what you are asking me. And if it's an intra-company transfer, your 7 years is dependent on your position of your NOC code. So yes, if you do get promoted, you may, again on IRCC's discretion, you may get an extra 2 years depending on your NOC code. I'm in Manitoba and my spouse is in Ontario. Can I apply for Manitoba PNP? Will it affect my application? No, it will not. If you are the primary applicant and if you live in Manitoba, then you can certainly apply for Manitoba PNP. Last question, guys. I graduated and work as an office admin, but haven't received my first PGWP. Will an employment letter help me get PR? Again, I don't understand. Your employment letter will help establish your work experience. So the day you applied for your postgraduate work permit, from that date onwards, you can count your work experience as valid eligible work experience. And as long as your employer gives you that document which states that you're working from this date and you have a postgraduate work permit application to support that you're eligible to work from this date full time, then yes, even if you don't have your work permit approved yet, that period of implied status is your legal valid work status and you can still claim points for it in your PR application. I hope that's what you were asking for. Well, here we are. Thank you so much once again for joining in. Again, another episode done and finished. Tune in again next week. And until then, stay forever hopeful. And of course, please don't forget to subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll see you next time.